money to buy proper equipment. So I want to ask Marty. Marty, you've been lifting since the 60s.
Yep.
And gyms were few and far between, and Iron Company wasn't around to buy equipment from. So what's some of the crazy stuff that you guys had to do to get by back then?
Well, let me see. I think my first weight set was a 110-pound, I think it was a Billard. My father got it from Montgomery Ward's. Gave it to me for Christmas.
Yeah, that's what I started with. Billard Barbell.
I wore that thing out. 5-foot bar, 3-foot sleeve, 2 red collars that you had a hex wrench to tighten them up.
Right.
Collars, cheap collars on the outside. It was a big day in my life when I outgrew the 110-pound set and saved up enough money to get a pair of 25s. 25s look cool, right, because they were tall.
Yeah, the 25-pound plates.
Yeah. Yep, that was a big deal.
That's exactly what I did. I got mine from the neighbor next door, and he was storing it in his basement. It was all rusty and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I took it, I sanded it down and painted it. Man, I was into it, man. I painted it, I think it was just black, but I made it look nice. And you're right, you had the old collars that I think were cast iron. You had the bolt that you had to like tighten with a wrench or whatever it was.
And you eventually had to throw the sleeve away because you couldn't get enough weight on it. You had to bring the collars in.
You had to keep increasing the length of the sleeve.
No, you took the sleeve off and threw it away. And you didn't have a sleeve, you just had the bare bar, because that way you could bring the collars in on the 5-foot bar to make enough room for all the weight you had on it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The outer sleeve you had to increase so you could pack more weights on it.
It wasn't a sleeve, it was just more bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like nothing moved. Let me tell you, when you got to be...
By the time we were done, it looked like an Olympic dumbbell with like 2.5-foot sleeves on each end.
Yes. Yes, and let me tell you, when you are able to clean 300 with that thing, oh my God, it's like a solid dumbbell, right?
Right.
Oh, it was horrible. And then for the bench, all our lifting was done on our feet, right? The only other lifting we did was a bench press. And we had a picnic bench, a flimsy, wobbly picnic bench. My father had a World War II Army locker that slid perfectly underneath the picnic bench and just was able to support it. So that was the support. You had to have 2 guys hand you the weight.
Right, and I was using I lived in Maryland over by you for a few years. That's where I really started. And then when I came to visit my mother over here in California, well, they had an old barbell set and they had a picnic table and bench out back. And, it was only a 5-foot bar, so what I did was you had to take a ladder and, fold the ladder up, lay it down on the bench, because that's what you had to set your bar down on so that you could get your hands up underneath the bar. And I remember one time I'm benching. First you had to make sure that you didn't tip the whole damn bench over while you were benching. You had to make sure your leverage was right and your positioning was right. But then one time I laid it down after a set of presses and I wasn't paying attention and the thing rolled off onto my face, rolled off of this ladder and almost broke my nose. So that was almost and pretty much every time we were using this kind of stuff, you were risking injury and, did we care?
Well,
no, we were young and we were hungry and we just wanted to get big and muscular, right?
Bored.
Bored.
Yeah. Boredom's a fabulous motivator. I tell you, there's a lot of similarities between the type of fitness that we did back then and the current incredible gains that the guys in prison are getting. I know we've talked about this before, but You look at the gains that the prisoners are getting compared to the outside guys at the fancy, for the $250 an hour personal trainers, and those guys locked up are getting incredible gains, and it's largely because they are confined to primitive tools. What do they have? Well, they certainly have consistency, right? If you're in prison, you're going to get your training in. Their sessions are necessarily short, right? Because they're only allowed a certain amount of time in the yard, and they're confined to the bare bones movements, right? Maybe they're lucky and have a pull-up bar, chin bar, and a set of dips, barbell, dumbbells, great, okay, and that's where the gains are if you're consistent and heavy. Also, they have that whole psychological aspect where you're being watched by people whose opinions you care about, right?
Yeah.
So we created the same environment because we had a group of guys. There were so many kids when I was coming up that it was easy to get a group of guys. We trained up in my basement, a sheet of plywood laid on the concrete floor, right? There's your lifting platform. And everybody would lift in turn. I mean, and we do the same lifts. We do the Olympic lifts, we do the bench press, we do squats. What else? Deadlift, lots of curls, right? But we train 3 times a week.
But leading up to that, and we talked about this yesterday in school, in high school, you and I, before we had this equipment, we did certain things. Tell the story about the classroom, what you were doing in the classroom. Your teacher thought you were crazy.
Well, I was later in high school. I was pretty rocked out then. But in French class, I was the worst French student. I flunked 3 years in a row. Had no knack for languages whatsoever, just an idiot. So anyway, but we had desks that were nailed to the floor for some reason in French class. So I would do curls, isometric curls, and I could do isometric calf raises. While I'm sitting in class, I'm just tugging at this desk. So I met him years later after, I was out of high school. He said, "Man," he said, "I used to look at you." He said, "Looked like you were having a heart attack." Straining away at that desk. He didn't know what the hell was going on. I just see this kid all red in the face, grunting and groaning in the back room, trying to tear this desk out of the floor. And I said, "Yeah, I was just working on my calves and my biceps, my buys."
Yeah. I still remember, I had this McGregor gym bag, and this is what I carried all my books in. And those are the days we had lockers. Over in California, they're taking all the lockers out because there's all kinds of shenanigans going on. But we had lockers. I never used it. I loaded up my gym bag to max capacity, and that's what I would carry around with me all day. And I would walk to school, and I would walk back home from school. And the whole way, I'm doing curls with this gym bag. I'm doing shrugs.
What do you figure it weighed?
I don't know, man. It was probably only 20 pounds or something. But, I was just getting started, and that's all I had.
Right.
So at night, I lived in an apartment. I didn't have a basement or anything. So at night, I'm doing curls with this gym bag and tricep extensions and rows, and I'm going crazy because all I want is a barbell.
Probably helped.
That's when the Billard Barbell came into the scene. The neighbor next door says, "Oh, I have a barbell." I said, "What?" So it's history from there. But
yeah, you wore that thing. You wore that thing. You wore that thing out.
Well, yeah, it had smoke flying off of it.
Right.
I couldn't get enough, and I was having some problems in school, and I used to take out all my frustrations on that, man. I remember we moved out to a farm, and I actually drew out on paper and designed a bench press. And I was going to make it out of 2x4s. It was kind of cool because I'm like, well, how can I maximize the pec involvement because it's not going to adjust or anything, so I decided to put it on like a 10-degree angle or something. That way you're hitting the degree, a little bit of the upper.
10,
I thought that's probably perfect.
10 up or down?
Up.
Up, yeah, slight incline.
Just a slight little incline, and I thought,
like a bridge.
if I've got, one angle on that bench, that might be my best bet, because that's all I'm getting. And then, but man, it was 4 hours a day, every day on that farm. I lived about 20 feet from an alfalfa field. I'm in that bedroom cranking out weights for 4 hours a day, and then I started reading in Muscle and Fitness. You do have to rest, and you do have to recuperate. And I was like, you mean I don't have to do this every single day for 4 hours? So, it's a whole learning experience when you get started, but it's crazy the stuff you go through when you're starting out. And of course, when you do start out, whatever you do, you're going to make gains from, pretty much, because your body's like in shock. It's going, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Trying to adapt to all this craziness.
Yeah, well, and also your young virgin body being subjected to some serious hypertrophy, but you really need to, for the guys, you really need to wait until they enter into puberty, because then that's the period of time where they are getting like an injection of testosterone, right? That is the ideal time to begin a hardcore weight training program, because the gains that you make then stay with you for the rest of your life.
Well, you're right, and I started when I was about 14,
Yep.
and I was hitting it hard, and I'm telling you, I don't think I grew after that. I mean, I think at that point, the ends of your bones start closing up. I think you accelerate that once you start lifting weights.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, because I know a lot of guys that didn't grow anymore after they started. I have a lot of friends that started early like I did.
Right.
Talk about some of the crazy stuff you used to do in Cassidy's basement.
Oh, God, I don't want to talk about Hughes. I got a better one for you. When I was a young boy, I'm talking 10, 11 years old, I used to spend my summers on my grandmother's farm in Arkansas. Rural Arkansas, country, cotton country. So I found a 10-pound dumbbell on the property for some damn reason. She had like 10 acres. So for whatever reason, I found a 10-pound dumbbell. And I was a reader of, back then it was called Muscle Builder. This would have been in like 62, 63, something like that. So I decided that I would curl that 10-pound dumbbell all day long, because I was serious about big arms. So I did. And like every 15 minutes, I did a set. When I woke up the next morning, my arms were pinned to my shoulders. I couldn't straighten them because my biceps were frozen, flexed.
Yeah.
So my brother and my cousin, Joey, they hated me, so they would run around and pull at my arms.
Yeah, straighten you out a little bit.
Straighten me out a little bit, get me yelping. My grandmother's looking at me. She go, "What is wrong with you? You just look like you are seriously got some issues." And I can't, my biceps stayed that way, I believe, for the next 36 hours. I could not straighten my arms. So that was an invaluable lesson that I learned about over-tonus very early on. Too much of a good thing. We used to have to, past a certain point, Hugh only had a 6-foot exercise bar. And so past a certain point at his place, like past 650 pounds, you had to hang coat hangers on the end of the 6-foot exercise bar with dumbbells hung in the coat hangers to give you whatever additional payload you needed. But they had to be short because they couldn't hit before you bottomed out. And also you had to time it so that you hit the up rebound just right, and it helped you, because if you hit it the wrong way, it drove you into the ground. So it taught us a lot about squatting, kind of like it or not, you know.
And with all that must have created instability, right?
Oh my God.
So you guys were like the fathers of the damn
Yes, I hadn't even thought of that, but yes, we'll take credit.
Yeah.
I'll take credit for that too.
But,
Oh God.
so he was a welder, so
Yeah.
when you guys needed more weight plates, he didn't say, hey, let's go down to the Sears and buy some more weight plates. He had a better idea.
He cut them out of metal. He cut these ragged circle things, and on the side it would say 101 3/4 and 99.78, right, on the other one, right?
Yeah.
But he'd say, but now you need to use these two together because it equals out to 200.
So math was very important, especially there.
Precision. He was a very precise person.
Yeah.
So we get that right. But yeah, it was like Fred Munster's basement, right?
And his theory was, hey, if you can work out with all these contraptions, when you guys get to competition, you guys will really nail it. You'll really excel with all the nice official bars and plates and everything else.
No, not really. What he said was, this is what I have. If you want to train here, that's great. If not, who cares? See you later. Right? Let's be honest.
I mean, you guys made some great gains over there.
Well, yeah, but you had to deal with the realities. Also, the ceiling was like 7 foot. So there was no Olympic lifting. Any pressing had to be done sitting down. There was quite a bit of pressing done over there too. Yeah, he was a big believer, and he liked alternate dumbbell press. You'd see him down there doing that all the time.
What, did he make the dumbbells too?
I think it was a mixed bag, right? I think most of them were like already, hey, here's a pair of solid, round, like Civil War looking dumbbells, and here's a pair that he got that are made out of chrome from the Holiday Inn that went bankrupt, right? That kind of stuff, all hodgepodge.
Here's a motor block, go with that.
Yeah. But we had no machines. Did he have a lat pull down? He had a lat pull down, but you had to kneel down to use it. You could do tricep push downs, but he wasn't too fond of those. He didn't like those too much.
And so it probably didn't have a seat on it. Maybe you had to have a guy hold you down or something.
Yeah. You have a guy stand behind you and hold you down. But we didn't do a lot of them. Right? It's just, we were too busy deadlifting, right, to be doing lat pull downs, or too busy, or you cleaning, Clean's a tough damn exercise, But again, with raw equipment, it's so hard. The brutalness of the equipment is directly proportional to its effectiveness. The inverse to that is machines, as much as we love their ball-bearing, smooth, precision, wonderfulness, they're inferior because they eliminate the third dimension of tension, the need to control side-to-side movement. So right there, they're 33% less effective than the identical movement done free weight, particularly with dumbbells, because dumbbells are even more unstable, right? Whoa, right? That's what we want in terms of muscle activation.
Yeah. And you look back and we talk about all this crazy stuff, and I know people listening have all probably crazier stories than we do, but you look back and you look back with fondness, and you wouldn't trade it for anything because we learned so much, we innovated, we did, the best with what we had. It was fun. We were so fired up. We didn't care. We didn't care if we had an official 7-foot Olympic bar, 45 pounds, and all that. You did what you had to get by. And was it great when we finally got in a regular gym? Yeah, I remember my first gym. I was in heaven. They had 100 machines in there for every single body part, and I was like a kid in a candy store
Well, it's a different time and a different era. I mean, machines didn't come into existence really until the 80s. They were a little bit in the 70s with those, remember those multi-station Universal? They have like this, yeah, chrome thing. It was like a square, and at every, you'd have a station, you know, and that was like the first machine that we saw. But the machine revolution really didn't happen until the 80s. Up until then, it was pretty hardcore barbell dumbbell. And also that's why there was not a lot of female participation in gyms back then either. That came with the fitness revolution in the 80s. All of a sudden it became okay for ladies to go to the gym, and the gyms responded accordingly.
Yeah, I think especially when Nautilus came on and made the...
Yep, that's true.
Came out with all the Nautilus machines.
And the Jane Fonda aerobic revolution. That's when they all wanted to meet in a class situation. That was the most lucrative time for fitness clubs that there's ever been. They could cram, 200 women onto a basketball court with one instructor, making bank on every single one.
Yeah.
I saw it. I used to belong to Aspen Hill Racket and Fitness Club, and man, 5 nights a week, those women would fill. Now, this is a small inside facility, but still, I mean, they put certainly 100 women would be taking a class at the same time. The instructor on an elevated stage. Wow, I mean.
Step classes. Yeah, I remember, I came up in the 80s, a little bit after you, but yeah, you're right. That's when everything really started to explode, equipment-wise, and all the trends started coming in, the aerobics, the steps,
the machines have always gotten by on the myth that they are just as good as the free weight lifts they mimic. But that's not true.
Yeah, nothing's ever going to outdo the free weights as far as gains.
Well, it's rawness. It's the raw brutalness of the tool that creates the gains.
Yeah.
If it wasn't raw and brutal, there'd be no reason for the body to reconfigure itself.
Do you think that, us guys that did all this crazy stuff at an early age were more likely to make fitness a permanent fixture in our lives?
That depends on your life situation.
Yeah.
I don't see any correlation there. I really don't, because I just think that there's so much. Life is such a crapshoot. You don't know what hand you're going to get dealt. You can't. If everybody's life was the same, sure. Obviously, I think that the people that are introduced, I think young guys should be introduced to hardcore weight training early on, because it will make them bulletproof, injury resistant, stronger, more resistant to disease, to colds, you know what I mean? Just better humans. Stronger is better.
Yeah, I just think, in my opinion, knowing what I did, because I was so passionate about, making gains and getting big. And, back in the 80s, it was all about being a monster, being huge, and, that's kind of changed a little bit as we've gone on, and more people were thinking about, a ripped physique and not being quite as big and being more healthy and all that. But knowing what you went through and just doing anything possible to get it done, I just think that's an indicator that, fitness was just really deeply ingrained in our DNA, and chances are that someone doing all that and going through all that would just, I don't know, have more longevity with fitness in their lives. I don't know. But like
if life cooperates.
If life cooperates, it depends on the person. There's a lot of
illness, no illness, sickness, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But stronger is better, and the beautiful thing about it is that you can get by terrible tools, right?
Yeah. One thing I just forgot from your book, Purposeful Primitive, was the shot of Ken Fantano doing those 145-pound dumbbells.
Yeah, with.
And it shows guys holding additional 55-pound dumbbells on top of the 145s.
Yep.
So, and that's in your book. That's kind of a cool picture.
That was the reason that he would do it that way is because a 200-pound dumbbell was too cumbersome and would hit him in the face. It was too wide. So if he only went to 150s, they could, or 145s, whatever they were. Then one of the guys in the picture is Mick Golden, who was later in the infamous safari trip in South Africa. Okay, he's one of the guys holding the 55s on top of the 145s. It was a total of 400 pounds. Ken would do 6 paused reps. 6 paused reps with a pair of 200s. And he said on the incline, standard 45-degree incline, ass and shoulders in contact with the bench the whole time. None of those inclines where the ass comes off the bench and they turn it into a flat bench. Have you seen that? So they're on the incline bench and it gets tough. So they let their ass come up off the bench, which you change your leverage, you turn it from an incline into a flat bench, which makes you stronger. You finish the rep. Then you put your ass back down and hope that nobody notices. I've seen that. That's very common at one of the gyms I go to. But Kenny made sure his was super strict. He said that gave me the contraction I'm looking for, Mark. He felt that was more important to his bench press strength than his bench press. He thought the bench press was a technique lift, and the steep incline with the pause was what gave him the power for benching, which I found extremely interesting.
Well, another great example of
innovative thinking.
Guys, figuring things out and doing what had to be done to get that set in.
Indeed, and I don't know. I don't have my finger on the pulse of the youth today, so I don't know if it's still.
Well, look, it's a lot different than it was today than it certainly was in your day and in my day, because there's a lot more equipment, there's a lot more gyms. You have CrossFit, you have powerlifting, bodybuilding, anything you want to do.
And knowledge.
Gyms all over the place.
You have access to instant knowledge, right?
And you have the internet. That's exactly
what I'm saying.
Right.
Any question you can pose, you can get an answer to.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. That would have been great.
But, still, man, I relish the days that we came up and just being able to talk about stuff like this all day, because it was really a cool time.
Yeah, it was a different era.
Different time.
Yeah. But again, I think that there's an excellent correlation between the gains that they're getting in the deprived prison environment and the gains that we got back then. There's a huge number of similarities between the way we trained. And just as we got gains back then, they are getting gains today. And, one thing we know is their nutrition is bad, and they are going to be steroid free. So the gains are going to be real. I think the gains that they're showing in prison are kind of pointing out the fact that maybe the nutritional component might be overvalued. I can't imagine being on a worse nutritional regimen than in prison. And yet,
that maybe there's more emphasis on the consistency.
Well, and the intensity. Those guys are not casually lifting. They're lifting like madmen because they want to impress the other folks in the yard at that time, right?
Yeah.
That's important. You put yourself in the spot, you give 102%. I think that's critically important. Most fitness trainees don't do that. They don't go past 78%, which is nice. I mean, they get nice, mild results, but you're not going to get the spectacular results for the modest efforts.
Well, like you say too, it's you know, the guys that are in the joint lifting, sometimes it's a matter of life and death. You know, so I mean, they gotta give it their all when they're in there on the weights and, you know, doing whatever.
Well, I would imagine it's important to impress.
Yeah.
So show heart.
All right.
All right, we wrung that out pretty good.
That was great information. I always like you know, going back in time and listening to all your stories and crazy things you guys used to do.
Well, like you said, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what it's about.
All right. We're going to end it there. Check out Marty's weekly column and podcast videos, Raw with Marty Gallagher at ironcompany.com. Marty and Kirk Karwoski are also available for online training, and you can contact them by visiting our Iron Company athletes page. Just go to the home page and you'll see the athletes section there. You can click on, and they've got their contact information there. And you can visit ironcompany.com to purchase the new Karwoski approved power bar. It's a great power bar. We've also got thousands of fitness products from flooring to strength to cardio to choose from. Marty's books, Purposeful Primitive and Strong Medicine, are also on there. Just search them out in the search bar.
Don't forget the cross-score book.
What's that?
Don't forget the cross-score book.
And that's available where? Is that on
Dragon Door, yeah.
Yeah, that's on Dragon Door. We actually don't have that up yet.
Well,
we can check that out.
you need to get on that.